Hello, Bainbridge. I'm Stefan Goldby, President and CEO of the Bainbridge Chamber. Ahead of the upcoming elections, welcome to this community conversation with one of this year's candidates for City Council. In the interests of fairness, we are asking all candidates 12 questions that knowledgeable Chamber members have helped us write, though their answers may lead to individualized follow-ups or requests for clarification. Each candidate has up to 45 minutes to answer all 12 questions. None of the candidates have seen the questions in advance, and their answers will be presented in full. With all that in mind, I'd like to say hello to District 2 North Ward candidate Brenda Fantroy-Johnson. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, question one. Could you describe your experience working with different stakeholders, such as businesses, community organizations, and residents?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to note that I was working with stakeholders before I became a council member. Being appointed to this position back in 21. Before then, I was on the Race Equity Task Force. And, even before then, I was an advocate for my neighborhood. So the Map Your Neighborhood preparedness program, I got into that real quick. And so as working with the Race Equity Task Force, being a founding member of that, our primary purpose was to try to identify the stakeholders that we would be working with. And we went through a large specific targeting of people to try to find out who we could work with. And so we've worked with businesses when we were trying to get our welcome signs up, and we wanted to have them posted in all of the downtown business offices. At one point, we even talked about having businesses as a safe place for anyone who needed it. So we've worked with the businesses on that. I've also worked with you and the businesses on the waste reduction project. So I think that's one of the good things I like about being a council member is that we have a good relationship, a good enough relationship to have businesses come out and talk to us about what their issues are, right? And that's largely due to your direction, which I wanted to thank you for. Other stakeholders, we work with people during our events, farmers market or BPA, or even the school districts. So there is a good deal of collaboration going all around, even with our affordable housing, working with our housing partners. So I don't think there's anybody that we're not working with. Let me put it that way.
That's a good thing. What personally makes you want to be a city council member for the next 4 years?
Well, I tell you, it's amazing to me that I'm in this position. First of all, this was never anything I ever aspired to or dreamed of or set out to do. But because I am here, and the, I guess, unorthodox way I feel like I've been put here, the benefits that I get are much greater than I think the work that I do. And that's mainly because I've been able to be a face for little girls and little boys who live on this island, who say to themselves and say to me, "Are you really the mayor?" They've never seen a Black mayor before or a Black person in leadership before on this island. So the benefits I get, I've been fortunate enough to be invited to just about every school on the island to talk to students about civics and our form of government. They're very interested. So personally for me, it's the hugs from the little kids, it's the cards, it's the paintings, it's the mothers who are able to call me up and say, "Hey, my little girl would like to meet the mayor." I've had ice cream with kids. I've had just interaction. And that's way more exciting to me than going to the wastewater treatment plant and watching poo become clear water. I mean, that's important, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't feel the same as a hug from a kindergarten. So,
what would you say are the top 3 specific current concerns that you hear from islanders?
currently, right at this moment, the issues that we are dealing with are the ends in our centers. We're also really knee deep into sewer District 7. And my favorite is affordable housing, right? But when you say what are we dealing with right now, we're always working toward affordable housing, right? But the things that we've been hearing about lately is what we're trying to do to register people for their Airbnbs and trying to make sure that everybody's on the same playing field. The wind can blow and the current issue will change, right? At some point, we're going to be talking about signs downtown, and I expect that to be a big deal. I got an email the other day about trails. And so I encourage this because every person who writes us or comes to public comment, that's the issue that they're dealing with right at this time. And there will never be one issue for everybody to deal with because that's just not how it works. Everybody understands where we are as far as affordability in Bainbridge. And so affordable housing and workforce housing will always be at the top until we, can kind of try to get some on the books that we can say, look, we are working toward this, and we can come up with a model that works for everybody to be satisfied.
I mean, within that, in the Winslow sub-area plan and the comprehensive plan, we have a generational opportunity to plot the path forward for the next 20 years on the island. What do you think are the top 3 things that those documents must create for Bainbridge?
Well, we've already had surveys to tell us what our constituents think is most important. And housing is most important when we're talking about workforce housing and senior housing. Those are 2 things that we have to get right because we're not getting any younger, right? We're all getting very old, and we all would love to stay and live on the island, either that we were born on or we just have so much love for where we are. So we have to get those 2 things right. And along with that comes transportation. We won't be able to get around the way we're used to getting around. So the things that we're doing to try to increase availability for transportation and also decrease what we're putting out into the atmosphere. So we're trying to electrify everything, but we also need to have a way for seniors to get around in an electric vehicle or be able to rent one or whatever. So, I mean, it all ties in, and we don't want everybody driving, so how do we entice the younger people to get on their bikes or to walk on the trails? So when we talk about building out, the plan, all of our other plans come in line with the comp plan, right? The Sustainable Transportation Plan and the Climate Action Plan all should be taken into concern when we're doing the comp plan. And that's why we encourage people to come out when we had the workshops to tell us what it is you would like to see. And I know the Senior Center is also working on a plan of what Winslow, I don't know how many people are working on this plan. Everybody seems to have an idea of what Winslow should look like in the next 20 years. And that's good that we're thinking about that, because the only way to build a great city is to think about it ahead of time. You can't piecemeal it, because then you get, I'm not going to name cities, but then you get cities that are kind of hard to get around in, and it's all spread out. It's not very well done. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is we've thought about it, it's intentional, and we have everybody concerned involved.
If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be?
Well, I think I'm not an expert on our code, first of all, but I would try to understand what's stopping our builders, our developers from being able to develop, right? We need to look at that first of all. And we are so used to the way Bainbridge looks that that's fine, right? We love the look and feel of it. But I think if we're going to take the recommendations of what's happening for our comp plan, there's two things that we're either going to have to do. We're going to have to expand the boundaries, or we're going to have to expand the heights of some of the buildings. Now, we can do both of those, right? In certain areas. No one wants Winslow in particular to have very tall buildings, right? So we can expand our boundaries and do this in other areas like the High School Road District. And, but I would caution that before leaping into changing anything, is trying to understand from our developers how these things would help them. Would they be more inclined to build, if we were, change some of our codes or relax some of our policies? I don't think we should decide that. We need to have more information before we do. So.
Within the city's housing action plan, there is an almost universal agreement that housing diversity and supply on the island must change for the sake of the community. But what kinds of housing do you think are most important, and why?
Well, right now, I think it's important that we have some rental units, right? We don't have enough rental units for our workplace housing. We have a lot of people who work on Bainbridge Island who provide services for us. And I know at least a couple of them that I've dealt with who would like to live here if they could afford to, but they come from Bremerton and just a long ways away. They're coming from Seaboat, just everywhere. And so my idea, when we're building these workforce housing, like what we're talking about doing in the future as a city, we have to make sure that we're not missing people, right? So not just low income, but maybe 80% AMI, right? And looking at different jobs to see what people can afford, right? And build to that, right? Not specifically AMI, but what can a person who's working two jobs at Safeway and maybe one at the grocery store, what can they afford to pay, and how much should that rent be? And we don't want to leave out, this missing middle that people are always talking about. We have people who maybe work over in Seattle, but they would like to live here. They're over like 120% AMI, and that's fine. The market usually takes care of those folks, but we have to make sure, like when we did our survey of what type of housing do we need specifically, and we need all of it. We do, but we need to be practical when we think about who is actually going to move here. And when we do that, looking into how do we tie it into people who actually want to live here and work here, and how do we give them specific benefits to do that? Do we tie these units to them having to live here, or there's different methods that we can use. So I think it's a tall order, but it's better for us to try to plan this than to have the state or someone else come in and decide for us.
Just to clarify, are you saying some of the people in the units might be required to work here? You said live here. I don't think that's the right
That's
word.
what, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So with more and more of the island's workforce coming to work over the Agate Pass Bridge, how would you try to reimagine transportation on Bainbridge? You mentioned electrification, but car share, buses, ferries, bike lanes, something else?
Well, we don't want a 4-lane highway coming through Bainbridge. That just kind of defeats our purpose of place, sense of place. We like it quiet. I think the work that they're doing with the roundabouts may help us, but it also may divert people to the arterial, lanes and roads. But I think what we have to work on is not trying to limit ourselves with what we're doing. So everything I mentioned before, the bike lanes, the trails, I would love to be able to ride my bike from where I live to downtown, right? And they're talking about that with the STO trail. I might be able to do that one day if I'm not in a wheelchair. But so we're doing all the things. I don't imagine there is another thing that we can do other than electrifying the cars, making sure we have trails and bike lanes for people to use, making sure that we have buses that run every day and that those buses are electrified, and making sure there's specific electric vehicles for people who would like to rent those. And then for the seniors to have a BI ride of their own that can get them around in an electric bus. Those are all the things that we are trying to do that would help our transportation. And, the STO, we're still linking, our important streets together and making sure that, safe routes to schools is working. And so the kids can get to where they're going. I think we are doing all the things. We have it all written down on paper. We just have to do it all.
I mean, more specifically, I guess, would you support a new Bainbridge Bremerton foot ferry route to better connect North and South Kitsap?
Of course I would. Yes. And I know they're looking at that. I know that that's being looked at, and I would definitely be in support of that.
How can the needs of both Bainbridge's residents and visitors best be balanced?
Well, we need each other, right? First of all, we have to make sure that we have the things that the visitors want to see and that it's easy access to them, right? And, that comes with the transportation. Do we have transportation to the Japanese Memorial? That we have so many visitors coming here to see that. We have to make that an easier access. And like I said, they're looking at that. I expect some of that to come forward to the council pretty soon. So, what we have to make sure of is that our businesses can support the visitors that come, right? So we worked through the waste reduction issue, sort of, kind of, to where everybody understands that it's a problem, but we're working on it, and the businesses are on board with that. And that reduces the angst that was happening for the business. So we want to make sure that we keep the businesses happy so that they can keep the visitors happy, And the islanders, we are excited when we see downtown buzzing. We have a nightlife. People come over specifically for the night market and specifically, to get ice cream, at the new ice cream place. They still come there, so we have a world-class museum and a world-class performing arts now that people will be coming over for. I don't know that there's anything we're not doing, short of, there's ideas out there that we need this grand symphony place, which I don't agree with. But short of that, I think we're doing all of the right things to keep the visitors happy. And the islanders, we hear from them when they're not happy. And we try our best to make sure we address each and every one of those issues. We have some council members that have office hours. We're very approachable. People approach me all the time on the street and ask me questions. And we make appointments with people and sit down and have coffee and discuss what their issues are and try to get to the bottom of them. So I think this council that I'm on, that I'm running for the next 4 years, we've come out of the darkness per se and into a more concerned light. We are concerned about what our islanders think and what they want and how they want it. And I've never lived in a place where that was more prevalent, where the governing body was so approachable. And even if we don't agree, we do take time to listen. And I think that's all anyone would ever want, is just to be heard so that their point can be addressed.
Can you explain your understanding of the role of a city council member in promoting economic development?
Economic development. I think that, specifically for the mayor, it's very important to understand what's going on in the city economically, right? And which businesses may be feeling like they're not getting the love they deserve, right? I know for a fact that if we work close with the chamber, we can, get information that a business may be thinking about leaving, and maybe try to figure out what we can do to try to, encourage them to stay. Because economically, if we don't have our businesses, we really don't have a city. So I think it's important that we're out there promoting and supporting the business so that, we're encouraging the islanders. We're letting them know in our announcements at our meeting that what we're doing, we're going to the cider house, or we're going to island. We're letting them know that we're not just sitting up here on the dais. We're islanders, just like everyone else. And we're out there eating at the restaurants, and we're buying local, and and I think whatever we can do politically to support economic development, we are always open to hearing new ideas about starting new businesses like BI Ride, and how can we help get grants for those type of things. And so I think we've been very supportive for economic development.
What community role can the chamber play to best help Bainbridge?
Well, and that's just it. You got your eye on the ball out there. You know what businesses are doing and which ones are, if we would not have gotten as far as we did with the waste reduction if we didn't have the ambassadors, if we didn't have the meetings to talk to people, to find out what the heartburn was, and how we could reduce the heartburn that they were going through. So working with the chamber, and you're one of those partners that I talked about earlier that we have to have a consistent relationship with if we're going to continue to enjoy the economic that we have, the economics that we have on the island. We have to be in good relation, and that's with all of our partners and all of our collaborations.
So I guess leaning into collaboration even more, what strategies do you intend to use to promote civic engagement and boost citizen participation in our local government?
Well, I'm going to keep going out to these schools, because that's who we need to talk to. And that's, something that's been on my mind since I've started with the council, is what are we doing to encourage our young people to be involved, right? So I've, after being asked to come to several different schools, I've talked with our inclusion diversity manager, and my idea is let's have tours for the kids to come down to City Hall and see what we do, and let's have an event where they can come out and meet the mayor. They can come out and meet the council, ask us questions. You'd be surprised some of the questions that the kids asked me. It was eye-opening. And I think that encourages them to then go home and tell their parents, what, if they're not being involved, then they're encouraging their parents to be involved. And I've seen this in action because I went to one classroom at Odyssey, and the next thing I know, one little girl who wasn't in that classroom told her mother that, hey, my class didn't get to meet the mayor. Can you call the mayor up so I can meet her? And that's what she did. And through that, there were, she's a biracial child, right? So through that, she got introduced to other parents who were biracial because there was a textured hair event at Johnny Levi's studio. So, you do one thing over here and it impacts 5 things over there. And so what I would like to see is more talk and action around what we're doing for the kids on this island. All of them, not just the little kids, the high school kids, and how do we encourage them to stay? When, that's the first thing kids want to do when they live somewhere is, oh, I got to get out of here. But how do we encourage them to stay or come back, to be involved in what's going on in the city?
Would you be in favor of getting citizen input via online surveys?
I'm going to say that depends on who's conducting the survey.
If they're city conducted.
The city conducted, yes. I don't want everybody out there, giving me surveys. But yeah, I think that's one good way to find out what the public thinks. So,
if you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
I would do something that would be toward entertainment for kids because they have nothing. They have, they have nothing. That's maybe too strong. I guess little kids can go to the museum, right? The museum behind the museum, the little kid museum.
Kitty Mew, yep.
Yeah, Kitty Moo, which I took my grandson, and it was years ago. Now he's 18, so after you take them to Kitty Moo and they grow up, then where do you take them? Sure, they have a lot of activities at school, but there is no place for kids to just go and maybe let their hair down. I was in one city and there was an arcade that was virtual reality. And, it's nothing like zombies coming after you in the virtual world. They really need something. And that's what I would spend it on.
Okay, here in the real world, with only limited time, money, and resources to tackle the challenges of Bainbridge life, can you name 3 specific actions you intend to take as a council member that you hope will define the legacy of this 4-year term of office?
Okay, well, my main thing is to work with our inclusion manager to create a new way to do our cultural events, right? We've been kind of sporadic on that. We've had race equity task force doing some, and so now we have all of these people who want to collaborate with us. And we ought to, what my plan is, to bring all of them together and have annual celebrations for any cultural event, not just Juneteenth, not just MLK, all of the cultural events all of the cultural diversity that we have on this island, I would like to have showcases for all of them. That's one thing. Also, I'm going to continue to be the cheerleader for workplace housing, affordable housing. I'm going to continue to do that because that's what I ran on. And when it wasn't a comfortable thing to talk about, I was talking about it, and I'm going to continue talking about it. And I guess the third thing that I would like to leave as a legacy is something to do with the kids. Maybe I can get that money, and if I can spark a fire under the rest of the council to get them to think the way I'm thinking about this, maybe we can see something develop. Yeah, that's the thing about being a council member. You're only one council member, so you have to get a coalition of people to try to help you to, bring forth an idea.
Well, thank you for spending the time with us today. Thank you for stepping forward to try and help our community. In closing, with what words would you like to end today?
I just want to end by saying, everybody always asks me, what is it like to be the mayor, right? What is it like to be a council member? I think it's the most rewarding thing that you could ever do for any place that you live, because you are immersed in all of the activities that deal with the city. You're immersed in all of the community issues, from the little bitty school, issues to the very large ones, and it's a form of service that if you're the kind of person like I am, I just revel in being of service. And it hurts me deeply when I can't give the answer that someone really wants, but being there and listening is the closest I can come sometimes to giving somebody what they need. But yeah, it's if you've never done public service, please get involved, get on a committee, go out and see what you can do to contribute. We have all types of committees, 17 different committees, I think, on our website, and we're always looking for members to come and help with trying to decide who's going to get LTAC funding, who's going to get, arts and humanities funding. This is your tax money at work, and it would be good if you were interested in where it was going. So.
Good words to end on. And thank you, Mayor Brenda Fantroy-Johnson, for joining us for a community chat.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.